Okay, good. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vitvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Chaitanyam sarvagam sarvam sarvabhuta guhashayam yat sarva vishayatitam tasmai sarvavide namaha. Good. Welcome to you all. We begin the next chapter, the second chapter in our Upadesha Sahasri. And as you saw prior slide, you can see the text there. And the prior slide will show you the title. The prior slide will show the title. Yes, Atma-vichara Utpatti is the title of this chapter. Utpatti, the arising of Atma-vichara, of knowledge of your true nature. And what we're going to see in this chapter is the most powerful methodology for discovering your true self. Notice I used the word methodology, because we've had this discussion before, and you may remember me saying Vedanta is not a collection of teachings, it is a collection of methodologies. It's not just a collection of statements of fact, let me put it like that. A book on science or history will contain a lot of statements of fact. The teachings of Vedanta may contain statements of fact, but that's not the essence of these teachings at all. These teachings comprise a methodology, a method of leading you to discover your true self. Now, why is this so important? Because the truth we seek cannot be expressed in so many words. You know, the truth of a scientific principle or a historical event, you can express in words. But here, we are engaged in a pursuit of the highest, ultimate truth. The truth of your true nature your true nature ends up, by the way, I don't want to this is not our topic right now, nirguna, qualityless. If your true nature has no attributes or qualities, your true nature being divine, your true nature being limitless, then how can we describe it in words? Words are inadequate. There's a famous statement in the Taittiriya Upanishad. We often chant it. Yato vacho nivartante aprahapya manasa saha. That little mantra says that which we seek is beyond words. Our words and mind attempt to reach that lofty truth, and aprapya, having failed to grasp that lofty truth, nivartante, our mind and words fall back. Beautiful verse. Having failed to reach that lofty truth, our words and ideas and concepts and mind fall back. They fall short. So if that's the case, then how shall we discover that true nature? And that's the trick taught in this chapter. We'll see that starting with verse 1. Pratishedhuma shakyatvan Pratished-huma-shakyatvan neti-neti-ti sheshitam neti-neti-ti sheshitam idam-naham 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 it-yadha pratipadyate it-yadha pratipadyate. Start in the second line, and you'll figure it out right away. Neti, neti, iti. Na iti, na iti. This famous statement from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad describes a process of negation. We just admitted that words cannot deliver you the ultimate truth, but words can negate everything else. And that's what the repetition of na iti means. The repetition, in Sanskrit they call it vipsa. Vipsa means repetition. That repetition means you continue neti, 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 neti until everything has been negated. What is the nature of that negation? Shankara makes it very clear in the third line. Neti means what? Idam na aham. Idam, this. Na aham, I am not. And notice he repeats it. Idam na aham. I am not this, I am not that. So I am not this refers to the central problem we face in spiritual life, and that's the problem of false identification. Having failed to recognize your true divine nature, sat-chit-ananda, atma, you then get identified with your body, with your mind, with your family, with your work, with everything else in life, failing to recognize that you are actually a conscious being utterly independent of all that. So the problem then is identification with the body, mind, and senses. Neti, neti refers to then the disidentification. Idam na aham. I am not this body. And this is Vedanta 101. Anything known to you as an object is not you. You are the awareful subject, not an object. So we have this fundamental distinction between subject, knower, and object, known. Anything known to you is separate from the knower, you. The body is known, therefore, na aham. It is not me. The life force present in this body is known, therefore, na aham. The sense organ, sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, known to you. You know if you can't hear properly, you know if you can't see properly. Senses are known to you, na aham. And then things get real interesting. Your thoughts, known to you, na aham. Your emotions, known to you, na aham. Your mood, good mood, bad mood, known to you, na aham. We'll leave it, we can get more elaborate here, but I think we'll leave it here so we can see this text. So when you negate all possible objects, that's what the repetition means, all that is knowable. I remember, in fact, this is a question I think I asked to my guru probably 40 years ago. I asked him, there are infinite number of things. That is not I. How is it possible to do an infinite number of negations? And if I remember correctly, his answer is, you don't have to do one by one by one. You put things in categories and you negate the categories. It's common sense. So one category is the world outside. That's a lot of things. How many things are out there? Infinite. So in one stroke, you can negate the outside world. In one stroke, you you can negate all the physical aspects, the physicality associated with you. In one stroke, you can negate everything in your mind. So this process of negation isn't negating an infinite number of objects, but rather negating these categories as being not I. Then, when all those categories are negated, then what remains? So third line ends na aham, that word aham, then go up a line, aham sheshitam. That which is sheshitam, that which is left over, that which remains is aham. So I am not this. Na idam, this body, na aham. So there's one idam, this, and one aham, me. Aham is the pronoun me. The pronoun I is aham. So if idam gets negated, what's left is aham. There are only two. One gets idam, na aham. There are only two, aham and idam. If idam gets negated, there are only two. There's one left, and that's a little bit grammatical and abstract. In a more experiential sense, look at this. The process of negation takes place in your mind, does it not? It's a mental activity like anything else. Is that mental activity known to you or not? Mental activity is known to you. How? Consciousness. Was that consciousness ever negated? Consciousness is not a thing like your body, mind, and the world outside. Consciousness is the essence of the negator. The negator doesn't get negated. Objects get negated. The one doing the negation remains, and that consciousness is the essence, the essential nature of the one engaged in that mental process of negation. So everything else gets negated. All the identification with your body, mind, family, everything, it all gets negated. What's left is aham, I, without any adjectives. These adjectives get us in trouble. When you say, I am old, old is an adjective. When you stick that adjective old onto aham, I, it causes trouble. The adjective old doesn't belong to I, it belongs to idam, this body. Consider this. Any adjective you use to describe yourself, imagine it would be a fun experiment. Sit down at home and write a list. All the adjectives that you would use to describe yourself. Every adjective you've written down apply to your body and mind and senses. All of them are not you. So any adjective you apply is not your true nature. So we have to remove all those adjectives. What remains is aham, I as consciousness, not I as ego. I'm sidestepping that topic right now. There is such a thing as ego, ahankara, sense of individuality. We'll have several chapters which will deal with that. We're not going to deal with that right now. So here, what remains is the true I, not the ego I, the false I. What remains is the true I, which is simply consciousness. Of course, that consciousness is not simply, that consciousness happens to be unborn, uncreated, limitless, vast, and utterly untouched by worldly suffering. That consciousness remains. And that consciousness, and because, first line, pratishedhum ashakyatvat, that twat comes because of, that twan, that final nakara comes because of grammar. If you remove that association, it becomes twat. Pratishedhum ashakyatvat. Because it is ashakyatvat, because it is impossible, pratishedhum, to negate. It is impossible to negate the negator. It is impossible to negate the consciousness because of which that process of negation can take place in your mind. All activities take place in your mind because of consciousness. Because of that consciousness, that process of negation took place. That process of negation, that consciousness itself is non-negatable. Pratishedhum ashakyatvat, because that consciousness of the negator is non-negatable. Therefore, last line, iti, thus, in this way, your true nature, pratipadyate, is established adha, clearly. Your true nature is clearly established through this process of negation. Let's make one thing very clear. This process of negation only gives clear knowledge for you, not of anything else. If you try to negate an object, like a pot, through a process of negation, will that work? So if I start off, this object is not an elephant, it's not a chair, it's not the sun, it's not grass, it's not a tree. Tell me, will that process of negation lead you to knowledge of this pot? Never. There's a fundamental difference between this pot and you, and that's going to be described in two more verses. But what will be described is this. You actually, in this verse itself says, what's left over, what's sheshitam, what remains, is consciousness. Consciousness is it is categorically different from all that's negated. We said subject, object, knower, known. The entire category of known can be negated. What remains is knower. But now, with regard to this pot, elephant is in a category of known, tree is in a category of known, grass is in a category of known, pot is in the category of known. It's not categorically different. So the point I'm making is this method of negation is not a general means of knowledge. It only works as a method for discovering your true nature, not for anything else. Adha pratipadyate, your true nature is clearly established. Then, aham dhir-hidam atmota, aham dhir-hidam atmota, vacharambhana gochara, vacharambhana gochara, nishiddhatmodbhavatvatsa, nishiddhatmodbhavatvatsa, napunarmanatam vrajet, napunarmanatam vrajet. Shankara is just brilliant here. Aham dhihi, the thought I, and it's referring here to identification. Ahandi, the idea of I. Notice the dhi, buddhi, idea or concept. Ahamdhi, the concept of I. Notice the concept of I is different from I. Do you have a concept of I? Do you have a concept of who you are? Yes. who knows that you have the concept of I? Consciousness. That consciousness is that because of which you know that you have a concept of I. What is a concept of I? I am male, I am old, etc. These are concepts of I, self-identification. So ahandi, concepts of I, idam atma-vichara. These concepts of I are idam. They are things, and they are atma-vichara. They arise from the self. Better to say they are superimposed on the self. These concepts of I are superimposed on the self. The maleness of the body gets superimposed on consciousness, which is genderless. The age of the body gets superimposed on consciousness, which is unborn, uncreated. The happiness and sadness of the mind gets superimposed on consciousness, which remains utterly unchanged in the presence of all mental activities. Remember this powerful teaching. Like the sun is not affected by what it reveals, in the same way the so-called light of consciousness is not affected in any way by the mental events it reveals. So if it reveals happiness or sadness, consciousness doesn't become happy or sad. Happiness and sadness, then if you say, I am happy, I am sad, you're taking those adjectives which belong to your mind and superimposing them on I. This is the problem of identification. And Sri Shankara goes on to say that this problem of identification is vacharambhana gochara. This term vacharambhana comes from the Upanishad, and it's a very profound observation. Vach is vak, speech. Arambhana, that which has its origin in speech, that which has its origin in words, and it refers to ideas. That which has its origin in words and ideas. That's a little abstract, I admit, but Shankara presumes that you've studied the Upanishad where this term occurs, but I'll save you the trouble and explain what is taught there in that Upanishad. And the Upanishad is talking about the clay pot at that point in time. And what it says is that the pot is vacharambhanam. It's born of words and ideas. The pot is merely an idea, a concept. The truth of the pot, of course, is clay. The pot is merely nama rupa. The clay is what is satyam, what is real. Now, Shankara is applying that here to show that just as the pot is not absolutely real, in fact, there's no pot. There's only clay. He's applying this reasoning to these adjectives you apply to yourself, old and male and happy and sad, etc., etc. Shankara is saying that all of this identification, all of these wrong conclusions you've made about yourself, Shankara says all of that is vacharambhana. They're merely ideas. We have many ideas about ourselves. How accurate are those ideas? Some of the ideas are fairly, you can have a fairly accurate assessment of your body and mind, but many people, let's say most people, have somewhat distorted ideas about themselves, especially someone, for example, with low self-esteem will have a very distorted self-concept. Now, my point here is that whatever whatever ideas you have about yourself, whatever is your self-concept, it's imperfect. Let's just say it's incorrect. Whatever you have concluded about yourself is incorrect. All conclusions about who you are as a human being, as an individual person, all those conclusions without exception are incorrect. Like to conclude this is pot is incorrect. It's actually clay. In the same way, all of your conclusions about yourself are wrong because you are truly sat-chit-ananda atma, that conscious entity, because of whom all of your experiences are known. The knower, independent and distinct from the known. So Shankara concludes then in the second half, talking about that ahamdi, identification, self-concept, self-definitions. He says, sa, end of the third line, sa, all of those self-concepts are, first word, nishiddha. They are all negated. Negated how? Neti, neti. All of those concepts are negated because if you are not your body, na iti, then the oldness of the body belongs to the body and not to me. The maleness of the body belongs to the body and not to me. So that's what he's saying here. Sa aham dhihi. All of that self-identification, all of those concepts of who you are, nishiddha, are negated through this process of negation, this process which is atma-udbhavat. This process which concludes in the udbhava, literally the rising of atma. You know, atma doesn't literally rise, so we'll translate it as recognition. This process of negation leads to the recognition of your true nature. Now notice that won't work with the pot. Negating elephant and tree and grass will never lead to the pot, but negating all that is known, negating idam na aham, I'm not this, I'm not that, that process of negation does indeed lead to recognition of your true nature. Why? Prior verse, you said, sheshitvam, sheshitam. What's left over after that process of negation is your essential nature as consciousness. Nishiddha atma udbhavat. And na punaha, not again, manatam vrajet. Not again will it vrajet, will it take on manatam, technical term. We'll translate it as authoritativeness. Yeah, that's a good translation. Mana, some of you know the word pramana. So here mana is shorthand for pramana. Pramana is an authoritative means of knowledge. What you see with your eyes, you trust what you see, you trust what you hear. Your sense organs are valid means of knowledge. Process of inference is a valid means of our minds can give us knowledge. Here, it's just being used in a sense of authoritative. What is not is that na manatam vrajet. It will not be considered authoritative. What is not being considered authoritative, the subject of this verse, is ahamdi, identification. So, identification will not be considered authoritative. There's a very important point being made here. And that is, ahamdi, the sense of identification, continues after enlightenment. Think about it. Suppose So, judge. Suppose I am so enlightened, I'm being a little facetious right now. Suppose I'm so enlightened that I have absolutely no identification at all with this body and mind. Then how could this body and mind walk in the room, sit down on this chair, and start teaching if there's no identification with it at all? There is an enlightened person in fact, my guru used to joke with it. He would say, I want a cup of coffee. Now, when he uses the word I, does he mean sat-chit-ananda, atma? Wants a cup of coffee. He would joke about this. And he'd say that if you're enlightened, you use language in a very pragmatic way. Why not? If you're enlightened, should you be afraid of the word I? By the way, there are stories of people who have claimed they were enlightened. Whether they're enlightened or not, we don't know. But they would never use the pronoun I. They would say, this is tired. This wouldn't want some coffee. And Pujya Swamiji made fun of that. He said, if you really know who you are, why do you have to resort to this unnatural language? Can't you use the word, I want some coffee, knowing that I doesn't truly apply to your essential nature as sat-chit-ananda atma? It's like this. Is it wrong to refer to this as a pot? We know it's really clay, but suppose we all decide, okay, we're not going to call it pot anymore. We can only say clay. Won't that be confusing? If somebody says, hand me the clay that's over there, that's confusing. I know it's a clay pot. I know the truth of it is clay, but what's the harm in referring to it as a pot when you know it's really clay? Got it? What's the harm in using the pronoun I when you really know the truth of who I am? So there's no necessity to abandon the pronoun I, no need to become allergic to it. This wants a cup of coffee, and adopt that very artificial language. We can use the pronoun I in a very pragmatic way, knowing, let me put it this way, not taking it seriously. We can call this pot knowing that it's really clay. In the same way, I can call this Swami Tadatmananda without taking it seriously. Sat-chit-ananda Atma has no name, has no status as being a Swami, but wouldn't it be artificial if I've said this Swami Tadatmananda instead of I? That would be very artificial and unnecessary. Pujya Swamiji himself, when he took up this topic, he would say the I is recognized for the what I don't remember his exact. I'm trying to remember his exact language. He might have used the word imposter, talking about this I as identification. So the I that says, I am this, I am that, I am old, I am male, I am happy, I am sad. He called that I an imposter. That's the I we call ahankara, ego, or here ahandi, that self-identification, that self-concept. And in Sanskrit, for that self-concept, we generally use the word ahankara. Translated as ego, fine. Ahankara, ego. Self-concept is better in this context. And Pujya Swamiji himself said, after enlightenment, you now have, before you had ahankara, after an enlightenment, you have, his exact words, an enlightened ahankara. That is, the self-concept remains, but you no longer take it seriously. After all, it's just an idea. Vacharambanam, Shankara says. If it's just an idea, what harm does it do to you? The residual identification with the body and mind that occurs after enlightenment, when you know that it is false, what harm does it do? It does, if you know it's false, it does no harm whatsoever. Sanskrit texts will call it badhita, negated. It's already negated. What harm can it do? Okay, enough said. Oh, I'm just looking at a point here. Notice how many, some teachers of Vedanta don't understand this, and they teach that you have to destroy the ego, destroy the identification. You've heard this, right? It's wrong. It's seriously wrong. Ego is natural. Who gave you this body and mind and ego? Ishvara? It's natural. So if Ishvara created it, if it's a natural part of creation, who are you to destroy it? Don't destroy it. Understand it. Understand it for what it is. Okay, next. Uh-oh. My slide did not advance. There we go. Okay. Purva buddhim abaditva, purva buddhim abaditva, notara jayate matihi, notara jayate matihi, drishrekha swayam siddhaha, drishrekha swayam siddhaha, palatvat sanabadhyate, palatvat sanabadhyate. Talking further about this process of negation. Purva buddhim abaditva. Abaditva, without negating. Purva buddhim, your prior conclusion. I'll give you the words first and then explain it. Without negating your previous wrong conclusion, na uttara jayate, na uttara matihi jayate, a new understanding will not arise. Without negating your prior wrong understanding, a new correct understanding will not arise. Pointing to the fact that we begin with neti neti. Notice we don't begin with tattvamasi. That's not where we begin, right? You are that. We don't begin there. Or aham brahmasmi, I am Brahman. That's not where we begin. That's where we conclude. Where do we begin? Neti, neti. Until and unless you remove the mistaken conclusion, a proper understanding will not and cannot arise. It's like, to use our idea of the rope snake in the dark alley. There's a rope, it looks like a snake. As long as you think it's a snake, you'll not be able to see it as a rope. Only when you know it's not a snake, will you be able to understand that it's really a rope. Suppose you see the snake, and I tell you, it's not, it's a rope. And you say, no, it's a snake. You are absolutely convinced it's a snake. I keep telling you, it's a rope, it's a rope, it's a rope, it's a rope. You keep saying it's a snake, it's a snake, it's a snake. What's the problem here? My job as a teacher is to start with negation. So if I'm just telling you it's a rope, I've skipped a crucial step. Negation. I have to say it's not a snake because, and then explain to you how the darkness is obscuring what is truly there. And because this fellow is afraid of snakes, he has wrongly superimposed snake on that rope. Only after explaining that and negating the snake, only then will he understand when I say it's a rope. So if you only see snake, it's a rope won't go in. In the same way, when you're identified with your body, mind, and senses, and then scriptures say tatvamasi, you wonder why it doesn't go in. How many times have you heard that statement, tatvamasi? How long ago did you encounter that for the first time? Did it go in ever? And why not? As long as identification with body, mind, and senses continues, nothing more can go in. You have to remove the wrong conclusion. This is exactly what he says. Without removing the wrong conclusion, a proper understanding will not and cannot arise. Then he concludes, drishihi ekaha swayam siddhaha. Interesting choice of words. Drishi he uses for consciousness. Drishi literally means seer and refers to the sakshi, the conscious observer, the awareful witness of what's happening in your mind. Actually, the awareful witness of all experience. He says that drishihi, that consciousness, is ekaha, one, and it is swayam siddhaha, and that's the key word here. It is self-established. Notice before we said when you do the negation, what remains is your true nature. Negation is a mental process. This is an important question. So you negate all that you are not. And that negation is a mental process. Then you have to recognize your true nature, which remains. My question to you is self-recognition that follows the mental process of negation, is that self-recognition a mental process? It's tricky. Do you have to think about it? Do you have to think, do I exist? Do you have to think about it? Do you have to think, am I conscious? It's nothing you think about, right? That you exist as a conscious being is self-evident. Swayam siddhaha. You don't have to prove it with logic. You don't have to confirm it by seeing it, hearing it, taste, smell, touch, etc. It doesn't need to be confirmed through experience. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to, I said already, you don't have to prove it. That you exist as a conscious being is self-evident. Swayam siddhaha. And it is that self-evident self-evident self that remains when all the wrong conclusions are removed. Palatvat, and as a result of your true nature being the self-evident self, saha, that true self, that consciousness, na badhyate, is not subject to being negated. Your consciousness is not subject to being negated because it is a self-evident self. Coming back again, we said that you exist. Let me set it up properly. You can negate, when you say, I am old or I am male, you know how you can negate that. So the oldness and maleness belongs to the body. If you say, I am happy or I am sad, you can negate that by recognizing that happiness and sadness belongs to the mind. If you say, I am a conscious being, how can you negate that? That's it. That's what it means. Swayam siddhaha. It is self-established. Being self-established, it is non-negatable. Now we come to the last verse of the chapter. 4 verses in a chapter. Unusual for a text to have such short chapters. Something else unusual about this particular text, if you leave out the first chapter, which we concluded last week, the following chapters are arranged in order of ascending length. So the shorter chapters are first, then chapters of a middle length come, then chapters of, honestly, they're in order. Like maybe there was some editor who arranged these chapters of Shankara, or more likely, they're in order of increasing complexity. As the subject matter gets more complex, it takes more verses, more teaching to explain it. So that would be a reasonable assumption. These chapters are organized from short to long because the chapters proceed in the order of increasing complexity, increasing profundity. So let's see this final verse of the short chapter. Idam vanamatikramya, shoka mohari dushitam, vanat gandharako yadvata, swamatmanam prapadyate. Gets a little poetic here. Idam vanam, the forest of idam. Idam is this, and before he used it with the word idam di to refer to identification. So idam vanam we can translate as the forest of identification. Now remember, in modern times, we actually like forests. But if you lived in Shankara's time, those forests were pretty frightening places because they're full of snakes, they're full of wild animals, and worse, they're full of thieves. In modern times, we don't think like that, but that was absolutely the case in Shankara's time. So don't think of Vanam, oh, beautiful forest. That's not the sense at all. This is the frightening, threatening forest of identification. And it is shoka mohadi dushitam. This forest of identification is dushitam. It has the defects like shoka, sorrow, sadness, depression, moha, confusion, delusion, obsession, ignorance, and adi, etc. You can keep going and going and going and going. All of the problems of life are associated with this forest of identification. And it's true. As long as you identify with your body and mind, you suffer because the problems of your body and mind are now my problems. That's the fundamental issue here. Anything you identify with, you become subject to suffering due to its problems. Is there such a thing as a physical body free from problems? No. Is there such a thing as a mind free from problems? No. But if you're identified with the body and mind, then those problems are my problems. And if they're my problems, I suffer. On the other hand, if the problem belongs to the body, thank goodness I am not the body. If the problem belongs to the mind, thank goodness I'm not the mind. Therefore, no problem. All right. So, the sense of the verse here is atikramya, having crossed this forest of identification, which is full of sorrow and suffering and struggle. Then what? Skip to the last line. Swatmanam pratipadyate, your own true swam atmanam, swam, one's own, atmanam, true self, prapadyate, is established, is discovered. You discover your own true nature, having crossed over this forest of identification, and he gives us a lovely metaphor, and this is the rest of the class here. Vanat gandharakaha yadvata. Yadvat, just like a gandharakaha, a man from Gandhara. Gandhara is his hometown. So a man from Gandhara, Vanat, escaped from the forest. And you have to know the story. So, there was a man living in Gandhara. I gotta tell the story right. And he left Gandhara and went to the forest. In the forest, this is not your happy forest, this is your threatening, frightening forest, because in the forest were thieves, and the thieves bound his eyes, robbed him, and then took him to another part of the forest, which was unfamiliar to him, and left him there, alone and bound in the forest. So I presume not only his eyes were bound, but maybe his hands were bound as well. And he's crying out, "Help me, help me, help me." And along comes a kind passerby who hears his cries, removes the bondage, and then he needs to get back to his home, Gandhara. And what does the passerby do? He says, "Go in this direction. Your home is several villages away in this direction." And then he goes. He goes first to the first village, and he says, is this Gandhara? And the person in that village says, "No. Keep going." Then he goes to the next village. "Is this village Gandhara?" "No. Keep going to the next village." You see where this is going? It's a very traditional story. It's often not told elaborately. I'm trying to share it with you a little bit elaborately so you can see all the connections. So, Gandhara is home. Home is Atma. He goes from home to the frightening forest of identification. And what happens, first of all, is the thieves, by the way, the commentator gives some of these details. The thieves are Mr. Raga and Mr. Dvesha. So those thieves What do? They bind his eyes. Ignorance. And then they rob him and leave him in the forest to suffer. Rob him means you're robbed of your true failing to recognize your inner divinity. You take yourself as someone who is struggling in the world for little bits of happiness. So this is your contentment and peace are robbed away due to ignorance, eyes being bound, and then due to raga and dvesha, those thieves who robbed him. And so now, left in the forest of identification, suffering, struggling, not able to see, he needs help. Please help me, please help me. And who is the one to help but the guru? The guru represents the passerby. And just as the passerby took the blindfold off him and released the bondage on his hands, in the same way the guru removes the blinders of ignorance. Nice. The guru removes ignorance and by saying, hey, you're okay. You are not bound, you are okay. But notice he's still away from home. And this is the key of the story, and what's often not appreciated. What the guru does is to give the student a methodology, going back to the beginning of our class. The guru gives the student a methodology to use. What is that methodology? Neti, negation. And the student has to use that methodology to discover one's own true self. The point of the story is the passerby merely pointed to the destination, Gandhara, which was several villages away. Did the passerby pick up the man and carry him? Didn't. The man had to go there on his own. The passerby couldn't go in his place or carry him. It was up to the Gandharika, up to the man, to make his way home. What is the message here? No guru can make you enlightened. You have to discover for yourself. On the other hand, this poor fellow, if he didn't have someone pointing the way, then his suffering would not come to an end. So don't, just because the passerby doesn't carry him home, doesn't make that passerby kind of unnecessary in any sense. Absolutely necessary. Therefore, the guru may not make you enlightened, but without a guru, you won't get enlightened. Guru is necessary, but what's also necessary is the process of self-inquiry that you have to undergo. The guru can't do it for you. You have to engage yourself in a process of inquiry. What is that process of inquiry? Neti. Just like this fellow went to the first village and said, is this Gandhara? No. Keep going. He went to the second village. Is this Gandhara? No. He went from village to village to village to village until he finally made it home. In the same way, you go through this process of negation. I am not this body. I am not these senses. I am not this mind. And through this process of negation, you eventually, what is left is you. You arrive at home, so to speak. One last observation here. We mentioned several times this process of negation. And notice when I was giving the counter example of the pot, I was giving an example of random negation. Not an elephant, not a tree, not the grass. And you get the sense that that random process of negation will never yield any kind of knowledge whatsoever. Notice here, the process of negation we're talking about is not random at all. When the Guru pointed in that direction, he didn't just say go anywhere. The Guru said go in this direction. So there is we can call it a directed process of negation. The expression neti neti doesn't exactly give you that sense, because it gives you the sense of randomness, but random negation will not work. It has to be a methodical, step-by-step negation. And that's what we find in these teachings, and these teachings out. And again, the teacher and teachings don't do it for you. You have to do the process of negation for yourself. Fortunately, you've got plenty of guidance. Literally, step by step by step. These teachings lead you through that process of negation until finally what remains is your true nature, sat-chit-ananda atma. That's the end of our very short chapter. Nice. I have a couple comments here a couple announcements before we conclude. First of all, I want to thank all of the online viewers for your many, many comments. I'm getting a lot of comments, a lot of questions, and a lot of emails. I'm delighted to see all these comments and questions and emails, because it shows that you're all really, really engaged. That's wonderful. Little problem is that there are more questions than I can address right now. So instead of addressing specific questions, what I'm going to do, first of all, I read every single comment and question. When I read the questions, then I understand this is a subject that I haven't made very clear. I haven't made clear enough. So when I read the questions, I understand where there's a lack of clarity, and I will do my best then in future classes to address those questions. So I may not address a question in particular, but in general, I'll do my best to address all those questions. One more announcement is that I'm working on a new video. The video is on a very lofty Vedantic topic, turiya, the so-called fourth state of experience. It's not only very important, it's also very much misunderstood. So I'm working on a video. Hopefully I'll be able to publish it this week, so you can check on my YouTube channel and look for the new video. And we'll conclude our class with a prayer. And then after a 2-minute break, then we'll continue with our satsang. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritangamaya Om Shanti 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 Om Tat Sat.